You're listening to the Ecosystem Support 360, a joint podcast to feature individuals, teams, governments, and ecosystems around the globe who are supporting innovation. Today is part 5 of the Yokohama series. I'm Andy from Foreign Founders and Seeking Leverage, tuning in from New York.
And I'm Kevin from Shibuya Ventures, tuning in from New York.
Please like and subscribe to this podcast. It'll help us greatly. Welcome back to the show, Nikolai, for what is our 5th episode with the city of Yokohama. For guests who are new, Nikolai was with us for the previous 4 episodes with the city of Yokohama as their representatives here in North America.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Kevin. So excited to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being a guest again. And for the audience here, in case it's their first time listening, let's do a quick recap before we dive in. I think this is going to get longer and longer every time we do an episode, so we're going to have to figure out how to summarize this, folks, but let's do this. So in episode 1, we introduced Yokohama's 3 I's, the Ideal Location I, Innovation Hub I, and International Reach I. And then in episode 2, we covered the Global Startup Matching Program. In episode 3, we heard from Christian, one of the founders who actually does business in Yokohama, about why Yokohama was the right place for his business. And then in episode 4, Yu Shinagawa of Annahal showed us how Yokohama supports innovation through the Startup Visa and Tech Hub Yokohama. And finally, today, in episode 5, we are joined by another inspiring founder who's chosen Yokohama as their base, Jackson Beaver, co-founder of Erebos Cybernetics. With him, we'll explore how the Startup Visa works and what Yokohama's innovation community really looks like for global entrepreneurs. So let's get started.
Welcome, Jackson. Is it better to call you Jackson or Jack? Which do you prefer?
Yeah, either one's fine.
Okay, awesome. Well, Jack, it's great to have you on the show. We're especially excited because you're a graduate of UC San Diego's. And as some of our listeners may know, Yokohama and San Diego are sister cities. So to kick things off, could you tell us a little bit about your background, yourself? You went from studying economics to moving to Japan and co-founding a company. So let's hear your story.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I grew up in Houston, and pretty soon into the college application process, I realized that I wanted to move out of Texas. And I didn't know it at the time, but one of my main issues with that was that there's no public transit. Turns out San Diego is not much better. I did experience my first bus in San Diego, but I was like looking for something a little bit better. And I kind of just started taking Japanese in college on a whim. My roommate was doing it. And so I was like, okay, this will be fun for like a language experience. I can fill a credit. And consistently every single semester, my language classes and with my Japanese teachers were always the most fun, like the most engaging part of my day. And I think part of that might have been class size, because other classes were maybe 250 people, whereas language was 20. And so I just kept taking it. COVID happened. I took a year off of college to kind of decide what I was doing, but ended up going back to college. And I had a plan originally to do a study abroad program that didn't end up happening. And so I just decided my study abroad would be post-graduation language school. So I applied for that kind of during my last semester of college. And then essentially 2 weeks after I graduated, I was on a plane to Japan, starting my language school. And then around the time language school was ending, I was kind of just like, how am I going to stay here? What's my next visa path? And I got very lucky because UC San Diego made a list of Japan's top 100 universities. So I was able to get access to a newly formed startup visa called the J-Find visa. And so that was essentially my path to visa. And that's valid for 2 years. And while I was on that, it says it's for entrepreneurial activities. So I was like, okay, well, now I have a plan. I will start a business. And at the time, I was a member of this space called the Tokyo Hackerspace. And it's kind of a little like maker space. There's a lot of electronics engineers there. I didn't know much about electronics engineering, but I was happy to learn and just happy to meet people. And someone mentioned to me one of my first times there that it was a good place to meet potential business partners. And I was like, oh, great idea. That's what I'm looking for. So I did end up meeting my co-founder, and pretty quickly we decided that the path to their visa would be through the startup visa program. And then we wanted to be close to Tokyo, so that pretty much limits us to Shibuya or Yokohama. And Shibuya was not an option for us just because we're more on manufacturing side. We were pretty much left with one option. We didn't deliberately choose Yokohama. If they didn't have this program, we wouldn't be here. And so, yeah, we basically contacted Yu Shinagawa was the first person that we contacted about this process. And a couple short 7 months later, we ended up getting that visa and starting a business. Yeah. So that was like intro to business starting.
That's amazing. It's amazing way to sort of, through coincidences but also through your personal, journey, you've decided to land in Yokohama, and I think that's really cool. And, now that you've been in Yokohama for a little bit, what's your impression so far? How has the environment been? And, is it a good place to build a startup?
I think so.
That was such a rhetorical question. Sorry.
Like, I would say for manufacturing, I'm coming from a US perspective, and while there are places in the US to get contract manufacturing done as a startup, coming from zero is pretty difficult, and you really have to think hard about where you're locating yourself. And a lot of parts can't be made locally. And so those things you're going to have to get from probably China. And then you have to think about delivery times and potential issues that may arise during manufacturing. Whereas Japan just has a much longer history and much like, let's say, like Chushoki, very small local manufacturing shops are just a lot more common here. And so in our neighborhood, there's 3 just like local manufacturing shops that we've worked with a couple times just on things that we needed to do. So for us, it works really, really well. I don't know about other people's perspectives, but Japan has a large history of like Akihabara electronics as well. So I think there's pretty much something for everybody here, but especially that like local manufacturing ecosystem, it was really important for us.
So, we covered that a little bit in the previous episode, but just for the listeners who are interested in this startup visa program, but still may be a little unfamiliar, maybe we can pass the mic to Nikolai from the city of Yokohama to provide a quick recap of what the startup visa is and how it works in Yokohama.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep it really quick. Just to say it again, I'm working with the City of Yokohama's New York office, and the last episode that we did with Andy and Kevin, we had Yu Shinagawa on, who Jack also mentioned, and she is helping run Yokohama's startup visa program. And it's a great program, as we've heard firsthand experience from Jack, which is very cool to hear, by the way. But it's a program for people, from countries around the world that are interested in coming to Japan to start a business. It's as simple as that, and it's really a great resource for those people that, have a business idea already that they want to launch in the Japanese market. And there's a lot of reasons why the Japanese market is a great place to do that. I mean, it's a stepping stone to the rest of Asia. There's great manufacturing in Japan, great networks, really large corporations, a lot of international presence from global companies. So it's a great place, and this is a great way to sort of start that program. As we mentioned in the last episode, if you already have a company set up in your home country and you're looking to bring that to Japan, there are other resources available for you. But the Startup Visa program is for those entrepreneurs that are looking to start their business in Japan. And it, like Jack was saying, it's a way to be on the ground. You get a visa program. I think its standard is 2 years, and can get that visa by applying and working with Shinagawa-san and her team. And then you have access to the resources in Yokohama, the resources in the greater Tokyo metropolitan area, because you are right there by being in Yokohama, and you can grow your business with those resources, and you have that visa kind of set until you're established the business and can move into a different visa.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that, Nikolai. And then, you know, just to pass the mic back to Jack here, once you started the process, I know you talked a little bit about it already, but maybe if you can elaborate a little bit more of, you know, what are the exact potentially specific support that you received, or maybe what you thought was like the biggest benefit of you going through the startup visa program for you to establish your base in Yokohama, let alone Japan. I think that would be great.
Yeah. One of the first clearest benefits that we get is the visa, which is essential. It's if you don't have that, you're not starting a business in Japan. While there is an option to go straight directly to the business manager visa, in our case, we wanted to start with the startup visa first, and also that it basically connected us with the Yokohama support system, which ended up being hugely helpful. So some of the things that founders or even Japanese founders find are the most difficult things when starting a business is opening a bank account and finding a place to lease. In both of those cases, the city of Yokohama support basically helped us all the way through that process. So that was directly tied to the startup visa program, but it was after we had received the startup visa. So after we received the startup visa, that process took us a really long time. I think mainly because the document preparation took a long time. After we submitted everything, it took around 4 months of interviews and talks with the city to actually get the visa. And that includes processing by the immigration office as well. That was our experience. It took about 7 months in total, which was longer than other people have taken, but that was our case. And then after that, we very quickly set up the legal entity. And just to set up the legal entity, you have to have like a corporate address that can't be a home address. So we started off with a share office called G Innovation Hub. We're not there anymore, but that was a great kind of stepping stone for us. And then from there, our business, I mentioned that we're doing manufacturing. So we're basically innovating a new metal 3D printing platform. And we want to be doing a lot of the manufacturing ourselves, but also if you're working with metal, you need metal manufacturing capability. And we could contract out all of this. Like if we have particular parts we need, we could contract out. But we just didn't like that idea. And my co-founder, Ignis, is a master machinist. So our real estate needs were very specific. We were looking for a place large enough to hold a CNC machine and with enough capability, power capability to support that machine. And so I was looking from like February of, I guess, 2024, maybe a little bit before as well, with almost every real estate firm I could find. I would just go to like manufacturing neighborhoods, walk into the real estate office, say, do you guys do corporate properties or commercial properties? And then kind of tell them our needs. And I was told no so many times. I don't know how many places I visited, but a lot of places just don't do that kind of property. And then the ones that I did find really didn't fit our needs entirely or were too small, honestly. And through the city, so we would have monthly meetings with the startup support office. And one of the people in those monthly meetings happened to introduce us to a real estate agent that had essentially the perfect property for us. And very quickly through that introduction, and I guess they're showing some level of trust in us. The real estate agent had an instant level of trust that they walked into the meeting with us and the landlord. And pretty much from the first meeting with the landlord, it was clear that we were going to get the property. So that was essentially all supported by starting with the city. And then the bank account, we were looking for, again, months. I would apply to many banks. I applied to net banks, which are what people recommend for like a first-time founder. But because a lot of banks want to see a more concrete visa than a startup visa, they were hesitant. They want to see either a business manager visa or a longer term, like a 5-year visa or something, which doesn't really exist for a first-time founder. So there's kind of a chicken and egg problem there. But we were essentially walked into a meeting 6 months after I started looking for a bank account by Mori Kotaro, who is from the city of Yokohama, and basically said, okay, we're going to have a meeting here at this time. And I walked in, and that meeting was to sign the papers for the bank account opening. So he had done all of the work up until that point to approve us with the bank. And we just walked in and signed the papers, and that was it. So yeah, those monthly meetings were great for us.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, because as someone who's lived in Japan, and as the listeners that know Japan might know, there are still some processes that take a lot of paperwork, and bank accounts are one of them. And having someone help you do that is just, it's wonderful. So I'm glad that you were able to get that support. That's great.
Yeah, that's a huge like statement for the city, and also like how they're helping different innovation and like different startups, business entrepreneurs as well. That's really cool to hear. And I know we didn't get to talk too much about your business, Jack. Like, let's take a few minutes like talk about that. So you are 3D printing like innovative metal 3D metal, right? What are they making with those metal? Like what's the problem that you're solving for them?
So there are metal 3D printing platforms. There are metal 3D printers on the market today, but they are industrial machines. They're huge. For a full system, you'd probably be looking at a price tag of around $1 million plus, and they're not fully automated. So you would have essentially full-time trained staff that works with them, and there's not a plug-and-play solution. So there's very fine-tuned like parameter control that the people that are using the machines are responsible for. And if you're buying it for the first time, you kind of have to go through the process of tuning it yourself. But we want to see metal manufacturing, and specifically metal 3D printing, just way more common. And we decided that for that to happen, the price tag has to be reduced a lot. And for that to happen, we kind of need a different fundamental technology than what exists today. Today, metal 3D printers work mainly, and there are a few types, but the main one that you'll see is there's a powder bed where powder is deposited into, we'll just call it a bathtub, and layer by layer. And as you go up a layer, there's a laser that will come along and center metal where you need your part to exist. So as you build up layer by layer, you melt the powder all the way up, and then eventually you're left with your part in a bathtub of loose powder that you kind of excavate and get your part. And so that's a very manual process. What we hope to do is essentially deposit powder only where it's needed, and then come by and center the metal with plasma. So there shouldn't be any support material remaining, and we're going to design it so that it's basically fully automated from the beginning. So you would send your design and then get your print. But from where we've been up until now, we've pretty much been like a research lab. We're researching all the fundamental components of that technology, and like today we're doing powder flowability tests in different kind of nozzle configurations, because there's a lot of things that we have to get correct for this to work. But yeah, we have the platform to do that, and like I said, we have our CNC machine, so any kind of custom jigs that we need, we can create pretty easily. So,
yeah. And where does the name come from?
So the cybernetics part comes from my co-founder. That was what she wanted, and she was like, we are going to be cybernetics after metal 3D printing, so let's start here. And then Erebos, it just came from a book that I read when I was a child. I actually reread it and was more surprised. I didn't really like it on the second reading, but I thought it was really influential at the time, and it was kind of just like a cool word that I
Yeah,
found. There's not much
that's
meaning.
awesome.
Yeah.
Where do you want to take the company from here? Like Yokohama, you have a great launch pad. What's the next few years look like for the company?
So for us, we are going to be looking at rolling out beta machines sometime within the next year. And because it's like mechanically intense, we really want those to be local. So we can do service and just talk to the people that are using it on a weekly or daily basis. But past that, there's no reason why we can't sell to a global audience. So if we have a platform that we're confident in, essentially we'll be on Kickstarter or like a just selling through a global platform and go from there. Yeah. But to start, mainly local.
Gotcha. I love your passion, by the way, Jack, for the technology and the product. And I only say this, but I only say this because I used to be an engineer and I used to do CNC machining. And I used to also look into 3D printing and metals. And so that's hits home for me. So I really appreciated that passion that you showed.
So,
And
can I say one caveat or question? Were you actually doing the CNC machining yourself?
yes, yep, I was
You're,
also doing G code as well, and
yeah,
using CAM software to build a little bit of more so on the research level. But yes.
cool. So I will say that the idea for this company and metal 3D printing in general comes from my co-founder, Ignis. All the experience lies there. But she has said that like you have to be crazy to stay in CNC manufacturing because the work environments are often like dirty. It can be dangerous at times. And this is not every work environment, but at least where she was working in Turkey, that was the case. And I don't know if you had that experience, but at least working the like processing of the programming as well was a big pain point for Ignis. Did you have that experience?
Absolutely. I can talk hours and hours of pain points. Always, looking, working in startup world is always about pain points. But yes, absolutely, the coding part, as well as having to deal with metal scraps and the chips, and doing the calculation afterwards, and also dealing with coolant and getting rid of that, and
Yep.
yeah, you don't really want to be dealing with a lot of EHS stuff. And I'm not going to go through the details for the sake of time for the listeners, but we could certainly grab maybe a drink or two when I go to Japan and talk a lot more about that.
Yeah. So we were basically like humans shouldn't have to work in that environment. And so we're going to try and make that possible, basically.
Wonderful. Hope you can launch it and really shoot to the moon with that. I think a lot of those who work in the CNC space would appreciate that. Yeah. So, by the way, I really love your not only the concept, but I think it sounds like your co-founder is also a born founder as well in Japan.
Oh, I was just going to say, for us, some people might find a Japanese co-founder that makes this process a little bit more streamlined, especially with banks or finding a place to rent. They're a little bit more willing to trust if somebody on the team has a permanent visa or citizenship, if they can speak Japanese fluently. In our case, I was the kind of Japanese speaking liaison. It's not perfect, but it was good enough. And the main challenge for us was, besides the visa issue, Actually, it is the visa issue. So the visa issue in that we can't get a very long visa, and then the visa issue in that there is just a more arduous application for two people. Typically, business manager visa is given out for basically one per company. And that's what I've heard from the legal scriveners that I talked to when I was going through the business manager visa application. But one of the reasons that I wanted to delay coming on this podcast was because at this point we have received our business manager visas. And we actually applied for 2 business manager visas for the 2 foreign founders at the same time. And they were both accepted. It took a longer than normal. Normally it would be about 2 months from application to receipt of the visa. It took us about 3, but as far as we know, it was okay. Yeah, I think this is like at least one sign that Japan is open to having multiple foreign founders and potentially could issue multiple visas. There's not a hard line of how many visas they will issue to foreign people in one company. But the rule of thumb, from what I understand, is that, like I said, there's 1 business manager visa per company. If you were 3, I think that would be a little bit more iffy. And then for employee visas, depending on the size of the company, it's not recommended that you have more than 2 employee visas for foreign founders. Oh, yeah, for foreigners at that kind of like very early starting stage.
Great tips. Thank you. I didn't even know that, so I will love to do a little bit of reading on that. But I do want to obviously respect your time, Jack, but I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit as it relates to, how you found your co-founder, who's also an immigrant founder, and how you just talked about some of the startup visa journey and the challenges that you faced, and also some of the tip that you just said, which is incredibly insightful, by the way, is Yokohama has been increasing their activities with respect to like creating this place called Tech Hub Yokohama. And also, I believe they hold several networking type of events that's more so like a local face-to-face. Personally, I like this whole local face-to-face networking. And it sounds like you found your co-founder at I think the Tokyo networking event. And I wanted to sort of ask you, and maybe for the benefit of the listeners, like, do you recommend any immigrant founders in Japan or thinking about Japan as a launch pad to attend these networking events, perhaps hosted by places like Tech Hub Yokohama, to maybe find their next co-founder or, actually connect with maybe their next employees, et cetera?
Definitely. So on Tech Hub Yokohama is a great spot. I think I'll be going there tonight, actually. They have almost every week, there's some kind of event with a networking session. A lot of the weekly non-Wednesday, second and fourth Wednesday networking events are mainly Japanese. So that's one thing to be aware of. But for an English-speaking event, there's Venture Cafe Tokyo, is kind of the Tokyo version of the Tech Hub Yokohama Wednesday events. And so I actually found my co-founder in the Tokyo Hackerspace, which is not as government affiliated. It's very much like a local group, but any sort of local groups like that, so the person I talked to last night came to the Tokyo Hackerspace, is here for 2 weeks, and said, okay, I'm looking to start a business. What do I need to know in the next 2 weeks to make that happen? And if you can attend some sort of networking events, talk to people that are here, and or find a co-founder, I think that's a great way to do it. And then another resource that could be helpful that's a little bit more informal is the Tokyo Innovation Base. And it's around the Ginza area. It's near Tokyo Station. But it's free to go and work. It's like a co-working space for startups. And free to work for the day, and a great networking opportunity as well. If you're looking for co-founders, there's a lot of people there that are working already. So maybe you could find a job there as well. But yeah, I'd recommend that to people.
One question I had, Jack, I'm glad to hear that you've been able to take advantage of the Tech Hub Yokohama and that you might be doing tonight. That's awesome. But I was curious, like, one thing that we often as the city tell companies that are interested in Yokohama and Japan is that one of the benefits of Yokohama is being close to Tokyo. That's only like half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on where you're leaving from, where you're going in Tokyo. And so I'm just curious, like on a standard week, how often do you find yourself traveling to Tokyo to take advantage of that part of the ecosystem too? Yeah.
Yeah, I was there yesterday, actually.
Okay.
I honestly don't consider Yokohama to be that different from Tokyo. Like, it's a greater Tokyo ecosystem. And so it's not that big of a deal for me. I mean, there's people within Tokyo that commute an hour or more daily. And it's depending on the place I go in Tokyo, it could be a 45-minute train ride for me. So it doesn't feel far at all. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, honestly, my commute in New York is like about that long. So it's like, it's Tokyo is huge, and just getting around Tokyo, like Yokohama is closer to parts of Tokyo than other parts of Tokyo are. So, no, I'm glad to hear that you're able to take advantage of both ecosystems there. That's great.
Yeah, I just said I was there yesterday, but maybe once or twice a week usually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. Jack, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It's, you being able to share your journey and your experiences, really invaluable for people who are listening and founders who are either going through the same process that you have been in the last 18 months, or even thinking about Japan as a destination, Yokohama as a destination. So really appreciate your time and your insights. To close it off, Nikolai, is there anything that you want to share with the audience on what City of Yokohama has planned?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, first off, just again, thanks, Jack, for being on. I think that was really valuable, like Andy just said, to hear your thoughts and your experiences actually going through the Startup Visa program. And for those that are listening that are interested in like hearing more about the details of the Startup Visa program and applying, if you didn't listen to the last episode with Yu Shinekawa, definitely check that out, because she goes about like some of the sort of process of applying and then her perspective as someone that helps start entrepreneurs go through the process. So you can get both sides of the story there. Yeah, awesome conversation here. So some other things to mention real quick about Yokohama. I mentioned at the beginning that there are opportunities for those that already have companies and want to bring them to Yokohama, or companies that are opening up offices in Yokohama. Yokohama just published its 2025 fiscal year subsidies. We have access to those. We can drop a link in the description. Those are available for companies that are opening up office space, foreign founders included, and there are specific industries that are targeted, and so you can get access to that free funding, which is really helpful as sort of an added bonus to what other soft sort of incentives that Yokohama has, like we've talked about, the ecosystem that you can take advantage of. So that's one thing just to mention real quick. Another thing is that I'm based in New York as part of the Yokohama, New York office, and there is an event happening in New York for those of you in the East Coast US or accessible to it in September 23rd. That we are sort of connected with. September 23rd, there's the Deep Tech Forum New York City, which is run by a Japanese venture capital company, and they're going to have a lot of large Japanese corporations there, people interested in the Japanese ecosystem. So if you are as well, please come and check that out. You just look up Deep Tech Forum New York City, and you can get connected with that. And we'll have some other events coming up that I'm excited to talk about, maybe in another episode of the podcast, if we're lucky enough to be able to talk again with Andy and Kevin here. But yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity for me too to get to hear from someone who's actually gone through the process of the Startup Visa and experienced starting their company in Yokohama. It's a great thing for me as the city to learn. And Jack, feel free later to let us know if there's anything that we can improve too, because we really want to make sure that there are things that we are listening to, and the feedback goes both ways, and the support goes both ways. So we want to learn from those that have actually gone through the whole experience. So yeah, just great to hear the whole conversation. Thanks so much, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone, again for listening in. For those who want to get more info or have any questions, please feel free to contact any of us. And last but not least, we would appreciate you answering a quick survey.